Welcome everyone to this presentation on the 5 simple steps for project design. Whether you're new to project-based learning or whether you've been a teacher engaging in project-based learning for a very long time, there's something in this for everybody. And really quick, let me turn this video off and come back to this screen. Again, so let's do this. Take 2. Welcome to the simple 5-step process for project design. Again, whether you're new to project-based learning or whether you've been a veteran doing project-based learning for a long time, there's something in this for everyone because it's just really going to break project-based learning down to its most simple parts. Okay, so welcome if you're tuning in. You're going to see me at the beginning, so hello, and you're also going to see me at the end. But I don't want to steal too much of the attention. I want to get straight into the strategies. And so I'm going to share my screen here. So it's going to go to a PowerPoint presentation. And hopefully you guys are seeing this, and we'll make sure that this is running properly as we go through. So again, this is going to be the 5-step simple PBL design process. And this will help you to be able to create the kind of deep, meaningful project-based experiences that you have hoped to create with students, but maybe have found kind of troubling to actually do. Here's, again, some pictures of the kind of project-based experiences that we led as part of a facilitator team in the different schools that I've been a part of. And you too, again, are going to learn those. So again, this will help you to design a project-based experience for students in the 2017, 2018 school year. The idea is that you're going to be able to take these strategies, implement them right away, and really engage students in a project-based experience, whether in school, whether you're a homeschool parent, or sometimes even if you're outside of school and you just want a simple framework. Who is this guy? So that's me, the voice that you're hearing. Probably a much better picture of me there on the screen. But my name is Kyle Wagner, and I'm going to be guiding you through this. Now, just to give you a brief background of my qualifications in project-based learning, because I've been doing this for quite some time. I've been an educator for over 12 years. I've been in the classroom for about 11 out of 12 of those years. So I know really what it's like to be a teacher and really have all the demands that you have. And my current position is as the middle school program director for a really innovative school called the International Montessori School in Hong Kong. And I'm developing a middle school program there. I also started Futures Academy at the International School of Beijing. This is a wall-to-wall project-based school that uses interdisciplinary projects centered around students' passions and them doing meaningful work. And I'm also a published author. Incidentally, I wrote a book on my experience, which I wanted to share with the world. And I especially wanted to share that with educators like you who are trying to really do these things and want simple strategies to do that. I've taught in standards-based schools. So again, this is really going to be tailored towards how you can incorporate those rigorous academic standards. If you're tuning in and you're from an international school, that's great as well. The international curriculum, the IB curriculum, specifically MYP and PYP, has been written in a way for you to be able to do this right away. And again, I want to emphasize that I started a program that transitioned to standards-based grading in less than a year. And quite simply, using projects actually helped us to get more rigorous and deeper into these standards. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And finally, and I wanted to leave this till the end, but I know many of you have probably seen the hit documentary Most Likely to Succeed, which is talking about this revolution in education. I was a project leader at High Tech High, one of the most innovative schools in the world, and really one of the first project-based learning wall-to-wall schools that really helped to improve student achievement through projects. So those are a bit of my qualifications. And more specifically, what you will learn is you will learn that 5-step simple process for project design. More specifically, how to determine your project idea, how to determine student experiences. So how do you really map out really authentic, good student experiences throughout a project? How to design milestones and assessments. Once you know what students are going to produce, how do you guide them into the steps to get there? And those are what you will learn. Now, first, my journey with project-based learning. Now, I think some of you are going to find this humorous. Some of you are going to be able to relate to this. And hopefully it'll help you really to know that right out the gate, your projects aren't necessarily going to be Emmy Award winning, Nobel Peace Prize winning projects. And that's okay. But unbeknownst to myself, I was this eager 22-year-old starting his journey into project-based learning. And after 2 years under my belt, I thought, hey, how hard could it be? I'll let my enthusiasm really rocket and propel me through this experience. Here's me at High Tech High, one of the most innovative schools, as I mentioned in the beginning of this. And I'm ready to just lock and load. Here's what I expect is going to happen. I'm thinking that as I go out the door each day, my students are going to give me high fives. They're going to thank me for the learning. They're going to be super stoked and jazzed about all the projects they're completing. Unfortunately, as most of us know, especially in our first years of teaching, most of the time is spent with our head in our hands. We've buried our head into our hands and thinking, what have I gotten myself into? And that's quite frankly where I was at, because projects were not some simple, beautiful, elegant design. To me, projects were this big, messy ball of yarn that really had a very hard time unraveling it from end to end. And it just seemed discombobulated. And perhaps you felt the same way. And so that's certainly how I felt in leading projects at first. And so what I did, what any kind of new teacher would do, trying to get better, I tried observing master teachers, as you see this eyeball represents. I got my degree, my master's degree in teacher leadership, and specifically in developing impactful student experiences. I planned and got some planning documents, and I read books on project-based learning that were early books published by some of the leading pioneers. And as is with anything, some of it worked. Here's a student presenting their identity book. It's a book that they professionally produced that took the audience through their identity in the culture, science experiments that related to their interests, and really podcasts and videos throughout the book as well. So some of it worked, but I got to be honest, you know, most of the time I still had my head buried in my hand, and it just wasn't getting to the degree I wanted. I really wanted students to be deeply engaged in learning, and it wasn't really happening in the way I envisioned it. And so I kind of reached out to some lifesavers, and I could have gone at it alone, but I realized at this point I needed help. And quite frankly, that's probably what I should have done at the beginning, but I was too stubborn. So I reached out to help and met, in fact, two of my greatest mentors through this whole journey. And pictured on the right there is Rob Reardon. He's the co-founder of High Tech High, which is an innovative wall-to-wall project-based school, as I keep mentioning. And he told me to keep things simple and to really break things down in the most simple components, and to give a very simple explanation of what students will do, and that is where the abstract principles come. And I kind of perfected that idea with my good friend Azul Turones, who was a director at the time of a school, and helped me to really write a book and publish some of my findings on this simple process so that other educators could do this as well. So this light bulb kind of went off in my head that projects, if really well designed, that is really what is going to engage the students in the greatest learning. And so I took my ideas to Futures Academy at the International School of Beijing. As I mentioned to you, that was a wall-to-wall project-based learning program that started out for a small group of students and expanded to a very large group of students within its second year. It went from 24 to 72 to now having a large wait list for that particular program. And it did all the things that I wanted to do initially when I became a project-based teacher. It engaged students in their own learning. Here's some students who are producing aquaponics systems in response to a food crisis and learning about food production. And here are some students who tackled a problem with a local waterway and sought out innovations that improved the water quality and then shared that with a professional public audience. So finally, I was able to do those things I wanted to do, and I'd say it all had to do with breaking it down to a simple design process. And so I want to share that with you. What are the 5 simple steps for effective project design? Now, if you have a pen or a paper handy, I know you can pause the YouTube video as you go, but you might want to take those things out and just jot down some notes as we go to try to capture some of your thinking as you go through this, because really this should be quite impactful and allow you to do those things that you want to do as an educator. So what are those 5 simple steps? Now I'm going to take you through those 5 simple steps through a project called Project Clean Water. And this particular project was in response to a local problem that we dealt with in Beijing. Clearly, pollution is a problem there, and especially the nearby waterway, which was called Stinky River, because it literally smelled so bad you could smell it from the school about a half a mile to a mile away. So as I guide you through this process, let's break it down to its most simple components, okay? A good project is going to start with a great question that's going to launch students into this journey, and it's going to try to get them to this outcome. Now, this outcome that students are trying to achieve obviously is too far away to just cross that gap on their own. That bridge is really the knowledge, the skills, and the experiences that students will need to be successful in this particular question. So again, I'm going to start with this because as we go through this particular presentation, I'm going to break down each of these components. But again, I want to keep it simple. It's a question with a clear outcome and knowledge, skills, and experiences students will need to get there. So let's start with the first, right before you get to our first step. How do you come up with project ideas? Now, there's a couple ways to come up with project ideas, but you might be thinking to yourself, how do these people come up with killer project ideas? And I'll give you a hint. It's not as tough as you think. It starts by a giant brainstorm. It starts by brainstorming what are some real-world problems or challenges. Step outside of your walls of your school and look at what are some challenges that they face. Perhaps it's food production. Perhaps it's the local ecosystem that's threatened by pollution. Perhaps it's a growing poverty. Perhaps it's the business community that needs help. So there's many different pockets or challenges that you might see, and that's a good place to start, is from real world challenges. Your curriculum. Look at your curriculum standards and skills. What do you have to cover? What are some topics that are emerging? And then finally, what are something that students are quite passionate about? Now, I generally like to start with a real world challenge or problem and see how it connects to curriculum, because those are kind of easier to come up with. If you start with your curriculum, it's very tough to build a project out of one specific standard. So start with the real world and then go backwards from there. So our particular topic, Project Clean Water, was clearly the convergence of these three ideas. It was real world, it was something that students were passionate about solving, and third, it really allowed for lots of connections to our curriculum and the content in which we had to cover. So your first step, if you're taking notes, your first step is to think within this topic, what might be a final outcome that you want students to achieve. Now, coming up with this particular outcome is hard to do on your own in isolation. This is a good opportunity to reach out to experts, reach out to people outside of your school, and find out what people are doing in the real world around your topic. And that will help you come up with what you want students to produce. Start with the end in mind. As we know, in any good planning, you start with the end in mind and then work backwards from there. So in this particular case, our outcome that we are hoping students will reach, which was right here on the other side of that cliff, was to produce an innovation and a proposal for a local NGO to improve water quality. Now, this is born out of having some conversations with some NGOs around the environment and seeing what they were doing to help improve the pollution situation. So having that conversation led us to this particular project. Because they were constantly seeking out innovations and proposals to really get to the community. So again, it's a simple statement about what students will produce. You want to start there. In this case, here's an example of a student who had created eco-friendly bags out of her old t-shirts, and that was to replace a lot of the plastic that was being used that was polluting the waterways. So it was an innovation. In fact, she got these bags into a local grocery store, and shoppers would pay a certain amount, and if they paid a certain amount and they used those bags, they got a discount on their groceries. So really, really impactful project. But again, we didn't know what she would produce, but we created the potential outcome for her to produce that. Okay. Step two, what is a driving question? Okay. What is a driving question that's going to lead students into this investigation? Okay. What's the driving question that's going to launch them off so that they can get to that outcome? All right. A good question is going to be open-ended. Again, you don't want to close it off. You want to open up student possibilities. So a question is going to guide students to what they're hoping to achieve, which is to improve the water quality, but not necessarily going to tell them how to do that. Second, what's the main focus? If you've identified what you want students to achieve or complete, a good question is going to capture that. It's going to guide them in that direction. Is it understandable and inspiring? We've seen these questions that are just written with lots of technical jargon. Those are the kinds of questions that we're going to do away with. Finally, does it create a need to know for the standards you identify in your plan for your project? So once you've identified some of those things you want students to do and some of those standards you want them to reach, you want to create a question that helps get them there. So here's our question. How do we use data to make a positive impact on a local waterway? How do we use data? Now notice the three things highlighted are data, positive impact, and local waterway. The reason we put data in there is because we want students to really engage in the data collection period before they propose their solution to ensure that it's really a rich, meaningful solution they come up with, and it really utilizes some key scientific data. Positive impact, it implies that they're doing something, they're taking action. Okay, your question should not just be in general about, hey, what's causing our waterways to be polluted, or what's all the pollution in Beijing from? Because it's not inspiring kids to do something. So notice how they're having to make a positive impact leads them to action. Finally, it says local waterway. Okay, I've seen some questions that are too big, they're too broad, and students go multiple different directions. Now, the reason that that's problematic is because it's hard to guide students in a very deep inquiry. So confine it to a local waterway allows them to go deep. All right. Step 3. So based off that question, what are students going to need to know to answer that and come up with the outcome we're hoping them to produce, an innovation and a proposal? So I'll give you some time to think about those. Think about what might they need to know about that local waterway, where the water comes from, what are the industries that are located next to that waterway perhaps. What is polluting the waterway? What are sources of pollution? How does it affect the ecosystem? So this is this bridge here, okay? This is representative of the questions students are going to have to answer right here in order to be successful in the project. Okay, so let's look at some of those need to knows that students will have to be to be successful. So here's some examples. You might have come up with your own. What's polluting our local waterways? What are ecosystems? How are they impacted? What organizations regulate our waterways? Certainly pulling from what those organizations do already will help students. How do we connect with them? Where are the local waterways? How does geography and human behavior affect their equilibriums? Now notice, by you engaging students in this inquiry, you're really starting from their questions and you're helping guide them to the answers. And it's more of a conversation and a journey together than it is simply a dissemination of information. So step 4, now that you know students have these questions, and of course, as a good planner, you've predicted some of the questions they might ask, what are the significant content, skills, and experiences that they're going to use to get there, okay? So here are the knowledge, skills, and experiences. That is going to bridge the gap between your question and your outcome. Okay, now before I go to the next slide, think, a lot of times you might have been in a position where you go up and stand and deliver. And that's certainly okay sometimes in projects. Sometimes you have to give some miniature lessons. If you're asking kids to learn how to take water samples and test those, certainly that's fine. But it should be in the context of what students actually have to know for the project. Okay, so think in terms of the content. What do kids absolutely have to know in science, math, social studies, and English to be successful? And in this case, if they're writing a proposal, certainly they need to know how to write a formal proposal, how to organize their thoughts, and how to research. In math, they're going to need to know how to collect and also to graph out quantifiable and qualifiable data. You might look into some of the formulas and expressions you have written for pollution and what are the different types of pollution. And so you can get into a little chemistry and formula writing and algebraic expressions. In science, certainly they're going to have to know about biological sciences, how ecosystems work, lots of different classifications of genomes, and et cetera, et cetera. In social studies, they're going to have to know about the geography of the waterway, how that is affecting its flow, and perhaps what's causing it to be more polluted, as well as this mass rush to urbanization, which is also a key social studies concept. Okay, so that content, now again, as I explained to you, the way you're delivering this content is not typical. It's you're alongside them learning together. Now, I'd suggest that you reach out to some of the local NGOs, some of the local experts. Who's talking about this stuff? What are they saying? And how can you bring them in to share that with students? Here's a student from a local, here's a representative from a local NGO who's talking about what they do around water conservation and sharing that information with students. Here's an out-of-school experience that students have. This is a nearby wetland. The wetland teaches students how you can use natural filtration systems consistent of plants to filter out harmful bacteria and pollutions. This is a sample they took at the 4th pool, and once they take that sample, they test the water and see what observable changes they see. Of course, this helps them in the context of their own solutions. When you're engaging students in the solutions themselves, this is where you get to those hands-on experiences. Now, STEM is obviously very important, but STEM pursuits, science, technology, engineering, and math, without a context, can just be some one-off experiences and can be no more innovative than a computer lab that we had back in the 70s and 80s. Okay, so this is a student producing a solar water filter and constructing that himself to hopefully filter out the harmful pollutants. So this is his way of addressing the question. You're going to see collaborative work. Students naturally are going to have to be collaborative. So as you're planning those experiences, think, who do they need to work with to solve this challenge? Who might they need to work with, and how are you going to observe and assess them throughout that process? This is some students working together with a local Chinese school doing their water tests. The local Chinese school was looking at their local waterway, and our students were looking at their waterway as well. Let's go to the next slide. You might hear some noise in my background. I apologize if you hear that. That's some students, and they're obviously super engaged about something. I think it's around lunchtime here. So finally, step 5, your exhibition, okay? Now, your exhibition shouldn't be an afterthought, okay? Your exhibition is a way for students to share their outcomes. What did they produce? Why did they produce it? And think, too, who might they be sharing that with? Notice we mentioned the question involved NGOs and the community. So clearly, students should be presenting that to the community. The question you want to ask yourself is, who is an authentic audience for their work? Again, plan this before you start the project. What is it that you're asking students to do? Who might be the people who will benefit from their work? Who's an authentic audience for their work? In this case, like we mentioned, it was a panel consisting of community members, some members from an NGO, some biologists to give them good feedback on their designs, and finally a representative with the local Chinese government. Okay, so they're presenting to those people. And then once they get their feedback, they're then presenting their ideas to the community to ask the community to take action on this issue. This is where you get the deviation. This is where you get the students engaging in their personal interest, okay? Sometimes people think project-based learning is you just let the kids go free, they can do whatever they want. You've got to give kids parameters, and the parameters are usually confined by the question and the outcome. This student here produced toxic-free lipsticks and dyes because she was noticing that a lot of toxins were going into waterways. Clearly, she is into fashion, and this really taps into her interests and answers the driving question. This other student had designed biodegradable plant holders because he noticed that there's a lot of plant holders and a lot of cups and pots that were used by the local flower shop that just washed down into the river or were disposed of there. And this is a solution presenting to those local flower shops to help them cut down on the waste and also to inform consumers about ways to cut down on the waste in the local waterways. Now, I've been talking at you a lot. I want to review. Step 1 in the process, determine your final product or creation. This is more determine your final outcome. Don't think in terms of product because product is going to deviate based off how students take on this challenge. But know what the outcome is. Are you asking students to produce a book? Are you asking them to do a presentation? Are you asking them to make an innovation? What are they doing? It's going to help you to do step 2, establish your driving question. What is a driving question that's open-ended, that's infused with lots of good knowledge and skills that's going to help students engage in inquiry and get them to that outcome? Step 3, develop your inquiries, okay? Predict what kind of questions students are going to come up with and be able to lead them in that process yourself, so that you can be a guide on the side. Step 4, identify a need to know, content, experiences, and skills, and create milestones and assessments. What do students need to know? How are you going to help them access that information from guest experts, from out-of-school experiences, from books, from resources, from interviews? How are they going to get that need to know? And finally, step 5, plan your exhibition for authentic audience. Okay, so who are they going to be exhibiting this for? What's a natural forum for this? Sometimes school's not always the best forum. I've seen lots of exhibitions that have existed in community centers, at various arts places, museums. So think about who's the authentic audience, where might students do this. Now, there's 2 ways. Those are the 5 simple steps. And now there's 2 ways for you to proceed with PBL this year. Okay, you've got that simple design process. You might want to engage with project-based learning right away. And I'd encourage you to do that because that's where you're going to get the most feedback. But if you go at it alone, like I did, you're going to experience a lot of frustration. And that's not because you're not brilliant and you're not smart enough, you're not engaged enough or excited enough about the process. It's simply that you need a community around you to support you. And the second way to go about it is with that community and get that kind of support and do that together like I did when I first reached out to take the hands of those mentors that helped me through it. And so I kind of compare it to a padlock combination. Imagine that you're trying to open this lock and you don't know the combination. There's well over 1,000 different combinations of numbers. And you might start fidgeting around and find that you got one of the numbers correct. But for you to get all 3 of those numbers correct, it might take you a year, 2 years, a lifetime. Heck, you might not even ever figure out that combination. And then the second way is to get that padlock opened up right away by getting help and get you to start engaging students in the experiences, the excitement, the initiative, the content that you want to see right away. And the way to do that, and I'm hoping that you'd like to do that, the way to do that is through a course that I put together. Now this 5-step project design is only part of this particular course, okay? It includes many other modules, and I'm going to go over those really briefly. So I'm going to stop this for a second. You're going to see my face very briefly. But after you see my face, you're going to see this particular course. So hello again. And I'm going to share this screen, which is the course that we're going to look at. And here's the course that you are looking at. It's a project-based learning design camp. Now, I put this course together for people just like you, for teachers. It's done by a teacher for teachers who are engaging in project-based learning. And I tried to put it together in the most simple format possible. Okay, it's based off my experience in leading these kind of learning, engaging experiences with students across all different platforms. Now, first, we're going to go through the module of how to understand project-based learning. You're going to learn the brief history of it. You're going to actually be presented with some data to be able to use right away that shows how it improves student achievement. Because we all know that schools and parents, they want to see results. And I've got those results for you. You're going to learn the big 5 of PBL. What are the components of great projects? We're going to take you through projects from High Tech High, from projects that I've engaged with, and projects I borrowed from other really dynamic teachers. Okay, we're going to look at those and we're going to try to break it down. What are those components? We're going to go through the design process like I just took you through now. We're going to look at what's the difference between project-oriented learning and project-based learning. The projects that we completed when we were kids, we might have done sugar cube towers or building of castles, and how's that different from the kind of experiences we want students to engage in? And then we're going to do reflections. There's going to be reflections from each module. In those reflections, you're going to have an opportunity to discuss this with learners across multiple settings so that you have that community. We're going to plan our project-based experience. I'm going to take you step by step through those different parts. You're going to have a workbook that is going to accompany you, that you're going to work through, and I'm going to give you examples and models of projects that I've run. And you're going to be able to fill out that workbook so you're pretty much designing your project one step at a time. Finally, I'm going to teach you how to assess the project. How do you assess and ensure that students are learning and reaching milestones? 21st century skills in a project. We talk a lot about them, but what does that look like in a project setting, and how do we assess that and ensure that students are growing throughout the project? And there's another module here I'm not going to show you yet, because that's a bonus module that you're going to get if you are interested in signing up for the course. And I don't want to show you that yet because that's not going to be available for everybody. Okay, so I'm going to hop back over here, and hopefully you're going to see this screen and I can jump back and forth through these screens. So let's jump back over here. I'm going to stop this particular presentation. You're going to see me again. Hello, everybody. We're in and out. I don't want to look at my face too long, so I'm going to go back to the application window. You're going to see the course again. Now, here's what some of the my clients are saying. I've used this course and this process of coaching with several schools. Here's a school, Gompers Preparatory Academy in San Diego, a very successful charter school. The instructional coach that I worked with and the teachers said, my teachers and I gained tremendous insight through Kyle's course and coaching by pushing past our comfort zones and providing students with a deeper level of engagement, rigor, active learning, and critical thinking. Of course, that's definitely what we want from our students. Another client who sampled the course, Frank Radica, of a private school in Canada, says Kyle's course is a great foundation for anyone interested in exploring project-based learning with their students. He provides a roadmap for educators to build their skills around inquiry learning. So again, this has those components of inquiry-based learning. If you're a school that does that, this is going to help you out with it. Another client, a very, very innovative innovations coach over there in Florida, says Kyle's course and meeting with our 5th grade team inspired 4 of them to launch projects that have been huge successes. In fact, one of the teachers went home after we had our meeting and spent 4 to 5 hours working out a project. And she said that's the most she's worked on this since she's been a teacher. And finally, it's not just for public schools in the States, it's also for international schools. This is a school I worked with to develop Futures Academy. And it says Kyle's ability to relate project-based learning to the standards curriculum we offer in support of students' passion has elevated learning for all students in our schools. And so that's a big international school, all the way to another small school. This is a Dalton Waldorf model. Anyone looking to learn more about PBL, whether an educator, administrator, or parent, or they're just getting started, you owe it to yourself to dive into this course head first. So again, I think there's something in this course for everybody. It's really designed in the most simple fashion possible to take you on this journey. Okay, so I took you through that particular course. Now, what will you learn? Here's again what you'll learn. You'll learn how to design projects. What are the components of effective PBL experiences? We talked about POL versus PBL. What's project-based versus project-oriented learning? How do you assess? How do you assess 21st century skills? What are some tools for project management? How do you design student experiences and incorporate standards? And then how do you teach and assess 21st century skills? So basically, it's a nice cohesive package. Now, to give you some comparisons, some pricing comparisons, because that's what I want to do for you first, because I'm sure you're wondering how much does it cost. But I want to give you some comparisons and references before I tell you how much the course costs. Now, Buck Institute, which is a wonderful, wonderful resource that offers workshops for PBL, and you might have explored them or had them out to your school if you're an administrator. They charge for their project-based workshop in Napa. It's called PBL World. They charge $700 per participant. Now, that gets you the 2 to 3 day workshop. But once you multiply that out by 20 teachers, especially if you're an administrator watching this, that is $14,000. Now, chances are you probably don't live in Napa. So there's other expenses that you're going to have to undergo just for that 2 day workshop. Not to mention you got your flights, your hotels, your transportation and meals. You're looking at around $1,000 to $1,500 per teacher. Now, that's not going to guarantee a transformation in your school. Sure, that might help those teachers have a better understanding of project-based learning design, but it's not going to be the kind of transformation you want to see in your schools. What's included in this particular course or this coaching package is you're going to get the course. So once you purchase that course, you're going to get the course right away. You'll have access to all those modules. You're also going to have access to a workbook that takes you through step-by-step how to do this. And it's guided by video lectures and lessons and reflections and documents. But you're also going to get, every time you complete the module for learning, there's 4 modules, you're going to get a mastermind call. And that's going to help you to really talk about how your project planning is going, what you're doing so far with students, and how it's working. And you're going to get access to me to be able to help you, coach you through that, and access to a bigger network of other educators going through this experience as well. Planning guides, you're going to get comprehensive planning guides as you go through. You're not going to have to recreate a lot of these things that people have to do when they first go through projects. Finally, you're going to access to a discussion group. That discussion group can be made up of members of your own school or a larger community, so that you can discuss where your projects are at, how do you engage students in deeper experiences, and what kind of challenges you're facing. Okay, so this is a comprehensive package that you get with the course. Now, what's the total cost for the course? Again, I gave you some of those price comparisons. The total cost for the course is $395 per teacher. Again, that's going to pay itself back immediately once, as a teacher, you start implementing this with students. Now, if you want to do this as a school and you're an administrator or school leader watching this, that's $5,000 per school. Now, this, if you do the simple math, will pay itself back and be beneficial towards you after about 11 or 12 teachers, because 395 times about 11 or 12 gets you where that number is. But you can implement this with as many teachers as you want at the school, all the way up to 30 teachers or even maybe 40 teachers. That's going to save you around $7,000 by doing this as a school. Okay, so that's the price per school. To be completely candid on how this works, you're also going to get a bonus of the book that I wrote, The Power of Simple. And this book is going to be free of charge. It's going to come with the course just for those people who sign up by October 15th. So I'm making this time sensitive because I really want to take on people who really want to do this work and are really committed to it. And so that's why I'm putting October 15th as that deadline. If you do it by October 15th and you sign up for the course, you'll get the book. You'll also get the access to the coaching sessions, where it'll be 1-hour coaching sessions where we'll take you through your questions and take you really with other educators doing project-based learning experiences. And also, of course, have access to me for any questions that are coming up. Okay, so where do you sign up for the course? Okay, there's 2 ways in which you can sign up, and I'm going to share that really briefly again and show you on the screen where you can find that. And you're going to see me again. Hello here. And I'm going to share my whole window. There's 2 ways you can get to that. You can go directly to this URL, or the second way, in which I suggest that you do, is you go to transformschool.com. Transformschool.com is my consulting website. On the very first page, you're going to see a link that says Start the Transformation Process. That is going to take you to the course itself. So again, transformschool.com, very easy to remember. Start the transformation process, and it's going to take you to this course, the Project-Based Learning Design Camp. Now, finally, if you want to do this as a school, okay, if you want to do this at school, you can email me. I'm going to stop presenting this again and take you back over here to how you do this as a school. If you want to do this as a school, you're going to email me at kylewagner@transformschool.com. Again, that's kylewagner@transformschool.com. Tell me your school and how many teachers you want to sign up and when you want to get started. You'll give a 50% payment for the course. I will then give you access to the course and access to the calls and send out those books to you. And at the end of the completion of the course, at your own pace, that's when you would pay the other 50% for the course. So I want to be very candid on how that process works. And again, do this by October 15th, and you'll get the book, the mastermind calls, and you'll also get an extra module on how to manage project-based experiences. So I'm going to stop this presentation. I appreciate you as an educator taking the time out of your day to tune in. As always, I know your time is your most precious commodity, so thank you again for the work that you do, the work that you continue to do with students. I am literally in awe of everything you do. And the fact that you took this time out of your day to even watch this shows you're committed to your growth. Reach out to me by email if you're school, even if you're a teacher, you want to find out more, and go get that course. Again, transformschool.com. The course is linked also down in the show notes. You'll see that course is linked there so that you can just immediately get to the course and start learning right away. So I'll see you later. Have a great day or an evening wherever you're tuning in from. and keep engaging students in meaningful learning, and always keep them first. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.